Hi, I'm George Kaltsoudas, illustrator and comic artist, and you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at dcaureview.com and on your favorite podcast app. I am Vengeance.
Hey everybody, welcome to yet another bonus episode of the DCAU Review. I am Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. Cal, we are here. It is a new year, it's 2022, but we have one final piece of business connected to last year, and that is, of course, our review of the final issue of the comic that started last summer and is just now wrapping up. We have Justice League Infinity number 7 to talk about today.
That is right. The exciting conclusion of, and possibly final issue of this series, question mark. Not yet confirmed to be the final issue overall, but definitely the final part of the Mirror Cracked, which at one point was called the Cracked Mirror by accident. But we are, that's right, discussing the Mirror Cracked Part 7 today, which of course comes as we've been talking here for several weeks now, several months now, seven months, I guess, because this is a monthly title about this amazing story written by J.M. DeMatteis and James Tucker, with pencils, of course, by Nick Filardi and colors by pencils by Ethen Beavers, colors by Nick Filardi. So we are excited to discuss that today and the final issue here, because we were left with a bit of a cliffhanger where it felt like all hope was lost as we were introduced to the big baddie behind everything for this whole storyline was revealed at the end of at the beginning of last issue. It turns out to be what they dubbed Amazo 2, so a dark universe version of Amazo, and he had pretty much run rampant over all of the Justice League and done away with Amazo and seemed to have no end in sight. So we pick things up at this issue, and he's sort of reveling in his glory. We get a narration for this issue, just as we have had for each of our issues, a different person narrating. This one, we return to our roots. We get the Dark Knight, actually, Batman doing the narration for this episode, or for this issue rather. And we learn that Batman, alongside Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, as well as the Flash and Green Lantern, were all spared from this destruction. Not really clear. Batman's not really clear about it. John Stewart's not really clear exactly how the ring prevented them from being destroyed, but John sort of encased them all in a bubble and protected them, at least for the time being. So we know that this is based on John's will, and we know that at some point the ring is going to run out. So thinking fast, Batman, as he's narrating, recognizing that at times, despite the fact that he puts on a brave face, he actually admits that sometimes he feels like he's way over his head, especially when it comes to dealing with things that aren't just your normal street thugs, which I thought was a pretty great vulnerable moment for him, especially in this moment where he feels like perhaps he's facing the final call here. And we learn that he actually thinks on his feet and requests that Flash tap into the Speed Force by sort of circling the bubble that they're encapsulated in to prevent it from de-energizing, which is allowing the anti-life equation, which was unleashed in last issue to seep through. So the Flash begins running around. Of course, we know that the Flash doesn't have unlimited energy, so at some point he's going to run out of energy, as is John's will. So we quickly turn to our remaining 3 heroes in the bubble here, with Martian Manhunter or Jean speaking with Wonder Woman and Batman, and he at that point sort of remembers something that the Oracle, this otherworldly, the Earth D version of Martian Manhunter, or not the Earth D version. Sorry, it was the Earth with the Nazi Superman, where he was from. When we learned that the Martian Manhunter from that world had been kept captive by Vandal Savage and was sort of used as this source of energy. So the Oracle had imparted some information in the Earth D version of Martian Manhunter, and they were trying to share that information between them. Jean suddenly at this point sort of comes to realize that the telepathic download that was processed from the Oracle to that version of Jean, and then eventually was shared with Jean himself, reveals just exactly who the person is that's going to be responsible for sort of redeeming and saving everything and causing life to once again kick off here. And he reveals it to be none other than Diana herself, Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it's so we do in fact get some callbacks to our previous issues, and I think maybe we wondered even at the time when those issues were going on if they were just sort of kind of not necessarily stalling, but just sort of filling out maybe our DC multiverse or DCAU multiverse a little bit, and whether or not these elements would come back in the finale. But we see actually both of those things, as you mentioned, Jean, having a telepathic message from two different versions of himself from alternate worlds, including the sort of decrepit Oracle, that as it was known on the Nazi Superman world, and then Diana on the world where she had met a sort of more benevolent version of Darkseid, who had as we talked about was sort of one of the more memorable single issues of this, where she had sort of first encountered the both not only this version of Darkseid, but also the anti-life equation, which as we've come to find out, is sort of the linchpin of what turned this Amazo 2 into this not only an all-powerful being that could snap the multiverse out of existence with a thought, but also the sort of the vicious side, the evil side of that came from this anti-life equation. And there was mention in that issue that Darkseid had theorize the existence of a life equation, sort of the opposite, something that could defeat the anti-life, but that he hadn't been able to figure out how to use it or how to apply it, and that his soul had just been too corrupt. But in fact, he was able to sort of bequeath it to Wonder Woman, and along with Jean's telepathic help, she is able to sort of unleash it. And as she begins to unleash it, it's clear that she's sort of being overwhelmed, as are Flash and Green Lantern. And it looks like maybe this Hail Mary isn't quite going to work out. But in that moment, Batman sort of takes a moment, and as you mentioned, he's sort of narrating how he talks about feeling out of place and how he sort of doesn't really have the same optimism or hope that someone like Superman or Wonder Woman may have. But in that moment, he reaches out and joins hands with Wonder Woman and hopes that their relationship, that their love, and Wonder Woman's purity can be enough to reignite the universe. And at that moment, Amazo 2 is there to sort of try to stop them, but the original Amazo, the main DCAU Amazo, is able to reconstitute himself just in time to destroy Amazo 2's body. And then in sort of the aftermath, as it tries to reconstitute itself, Diana and Batman are able to unleash this life equation on the world, and as it is said, rebirth the multiverse, restoring not only our Justice League, but the Earth D Justice League, and presumably all of those other worlds that we saw disappear. And it's kind of time for celebration. We've gotten to like our last 10 minutes of Return of the Jedi here. It's we got our postscript on this wild story. So it all came down to Wonder Woman and Batman joining hands and thinking good thoughts to bring us to the end of our villain, at least for now.
Yeah, we're left with that. We do have a little bit of some unsolved, some loose ends that don't necessarily get tied up. We do also have John Stewart, having his conversation with Vixen over his reaction in the dream sequence, or the imagined sequence that Amazo 2 projected, where it looked like that he had violently ripped the wings off of Hawkgirl, killing her, and John's reaction to that. So we do get the fallout from that, as Vixen very clearly was hurt by his reaction during that, and they have this conversation where it appears that their relationship may come to an end because of her knowing and her being sort of aware that John likely still has more than just feelings for her, but that he deeply loves her. So they sort of show her walking away, and then Shaira and John sharing some celebratory cake afterwards. So who knows where that is going next. If we get a continuation of this monthly title, then we may get some exploration of that, or who knows, perhaps in a future DCAU animated movie or tie-in show, who knows. But yes, for now we are left just that they are friends, and that obviously John still has to wrestle with the idea that he still has feelings for her deep-seated love for Shaira. We then get a nice little bow on Martian Manhunter, or Jean's story. Jean asks Superman to remain. They ask him if he's headed back to India, where he was originally, to New Delhi originally, and he confirms that, but he asks that for the time being that he remain with the Justice League, but no longer as the coordinator, but actually as an ambassador, as sort of an ambassador of peace, to sort of try and fend off cosmic brawls before they start. So specifically, it looks like Jean is headed off to Apocalypse, where, if you recall, way back in issue 1, we started off, there's this civil war that's brewing between Granny Goodness and Callbacks over who the new leader of Apocalypse is. So Jean is going to head there to do his best to try and maintain some sort of peace. And I love it. There's a little that he gets the blessing from Superman to do so, and Superman says that he truly doesn't envy that calling, and that Jean is a better man than him for doing so. So I love it. Get a little bit of a bow on Superman and Lois's story also, as they had previously been interrupted from their romantic dinner in issue 1 also. So they decide that they're going to go and continue that dinner. And then we even get we even get our final bow on the story when it comes to Overman also, as we see him coming face to face with after the restraints on his mind that Vandal Savage had placed on him, and sort of removed this section of his brain that was able to process the love that he had for Lois, and his Lois, at least. We learn that he's come face to face with that, and realizes that at this point he's at her grave on his world, and but is being brought to trial by those same freedom fighters that teamed up with Superman from that world. And then we get a nice little bow on Amazo's story too, as he's seemingly reunited with Amazo too.
Yeah, it seems like these last 2 pages here, you mentioned Overman, as we've come to know him. He sort of has this moment where he sort of admits that he was maybe motivated by grief, but also fully cops to the fact that you can't blame his grief or even Vandal Savage for everything that he did. He did it, and he was in control of his actions, and he knows he has to face those consequences. But and I think a theme that we saw very early on in this book that was continued in this scene and in that next page as the 2 Amazos sort of come face to face, and now with the second Amazo being free of the anti-life equation, being sort of restored to his more docile nature, so to speak. We see our Amazo sort of offer him brotherhood, and offer to sort of go and explore these vast unlimited Earths together, and so it feels like a theme that we talked about very early on, when our Superman is transported to the Nazi Earth, and he's sort of face down with this angry mob of people, and the first thing that he does is sort of reach out to that crowd and try to talk them down, and tell them that no matter what terrible things they may have done or whatever hardships they may have faced in their own lives, that it's never too late to turn away from that path and to find, and to do the right thing. And yes, that doesn't mean there won't be consequences for your actions, but that, it's never, that really no one in the eyes of Superman, and I think very clearly in the eyes of the two people writing this, J. and Mateus and James Tucker, that there's very few, if any, are truly irredeemable, and you see that here with Overman and with Amazo in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, I love that, because that's one of the things about humanity that especially I feel like especially here in America, and it's hard because we only have that perspective, but there is this desire to see those that fall from grace redeemed and welcomed back and given second and third chances, at least when it comes to celebrities. Maybe that's not the case for everybody's experience, but the saying goes, everybody loves a good comeback story, so the fact that the writers here gave all of these characters, including the main antagonist for the majority of the book, again, didn't excuse them and didn't keep them from facing the consequences of the things that they did, but giving them an opportunity to own their mistakes and to admit and own up to, and to face those consequences with a full understanding of deserving them, but also with an opportunity to at the same time empathize with them and show that they're more than just the sum of their terrible mistakes, that there are some of all of their parts, their humanity and otherwise. So yeah, I love that. I love that that's something that both of the writers, both of these gentlemen, included in the storylines, and wrapping everything up for all of the characters in a similar but different across all of the storylines is a great way. It's a feel good way to end the book, which we get sort of, I guess, a mirror image, if you will, of the ending for Justice League Unlimited, where we get a disturbance call that calls all of the Justice League into action, sort of launching them towards what would be the screen or the perspective of the reader here at the end, as we learn that there's gorillas attacking on the loose. Grodd and an army of mutant gorillas are headed to Washington. So love that. And then we get Batman narrating that he too, not only the Flash loves all of that, loves all of the excitement of that, but that Batman himself may just love it too. So a nice little bow on that. So again, we don't know whether or not this will be our final issue of this series as it stands, whether we'll get more JLI in the future, if this is just a hiatus for now, or if this is the end of the series itself. Either way, it's a fun way to end the story. I would say it's very light on action. It's very quick to go sort of through the solution, it feels like, of how they're going to get out of this green energy bubble to restoring all of the universe. And it does feel a little bit kitschy in doing so, but when you write yourself into a corner where all of creation is destroyed, it's kind of hard to write your way out of that in a way that doesn't feel sort of gimmicky, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they did enough in the previous issues to see that, yes, it is. Oh, well, the anti-life equation is destroying a life. Well, we have the life equation, which again is not something that's been created for this book. It's all stuff from those, the Fourth World lore that exists in the main DC Comics line as well. But yeah, not a most. It wasn't solved by punching, as we talked about here. So it's not necessarily the most bombastic or action-packed final issue. But yeah, I think overall it still hits that strong notes. We'll get to the art in just a moment here, but yeah, from start to finish, I guess now as we're beginning to wrap up the final issue, I think it's a really satisfying conclusion, because not only do we get the resolution of the immediate danger of this new version of Amazo destroying the multiverse, but you get to see the Justice League and the Justice League of Earth D shake hands and go their separate ways. You get to have a little bit of we always talk about that in our main show of characters not being in the same place that they were when the story began. And certainly you see that in things like the Green Lantern and Vixen, or even Batman and Wonder Woman to an extent. I think that's it's maybe is pushed a little further along than it ever was in the original series. So I think you have those moments, and as we talked about, sort of bringing back those themes that had been touched on in earlier issues about redemption and forgiveness and the ability to see a hero and to sort of believe in hope and believe in that good might prevail even when it's when it's looking pretty dire out there. I think all of those themes sort of come through in this final issue here, this final script from Mr. DeMatteis and Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it is a fine way to wrap things up. As you mentioned, we had a lot of I think last issue was the most action-packed issue that we possibly could have had. So having an issue where there was a lot less and you had to kind of wrap up everything that you had kind of set up thus far, and not knowing whether or not there's going to be additional issues, it does make sense that this one was a little bit lighter on the action, but it's very satisfying from start to finish. I think looking at the entire series, it's what you want. It's what you want in DCAU tie-in content. There's a lot of fun. Maybe certain issues we felt in the long run were just sort of treading water, as we mentioned, but bringing them back in to have an impact in the final issue, make them a little bit more relevant now. I think we'll definitely look back and show, some of the issues from this series we'll like more than others. And I think if anything, it just increases the thirst for more DCAU content. So we know that Mr. Tucker is going to be busy working on the new Batman Caped Crusader show, but hopefully he has some time, or if not, bringing in some of the additional writers and giving new writers a chance to play in this sandbox, I think would be equally welcome from us. But I think if anything, this has taught us that there's more stories to be told here and more fun to be had in the DCAU. And hey, as long as they continue making these comics, I think we'll be continuing to buy them and talk about them and enjoy them, even if it's not even if not everything is decisions or choices that we would have made. I think that we can look at the stories as a whole and say, you know what, this is pretty awesome that we got to experience this. So hats off to Mr. DeMatteis and Mr. Tucker for putting together a 7-issue story here that felt really fun and was ended on a high kind of feel good moment. So kudos to both of those gentlemen.
Absolutely. Now, before we begin to wrap things up, Cal, we of course must give some time to the incredible art on display here. Again, as you mentioned, we have on pencils and inks Mr. Ethen Beavers, who drew every single issue of this, and joining him once again for the 7th time is, of course, Nick Filardi as the colorist, and DC Hopkins was the letterer. So yeah, another, despite the fact that it's not as we said, not a traditional punching and kicking adventure, there is still a lot going on visually speaking, really from that first page where we see Amazo 2 sort of unleashing on the Justice League and sort of unleashing anti-life, and we almost immediately get some moments where we look to some of the people, some of the characters that we've seen throughout the story. We see Lois, Mr. Terrific, and the Atom, some of the other Justice Leaguers down on Earth. We see Earth D, we see the Freedom Fighters, we also see Granny Goodness and Callbacks, and we also get a pretty fun little cameo from some other familiar faces.
That's right. We get a look at the Green Lantern Corps. We get a couple of members of the Green Lantern Corps, including our one of our favorite lanterns, Kyle Rayner. We also get, as you mentioned, Mr. Miracle and Green Arrow. Blue Beetle makes an appearance, as does Dr. Fate and also Booster Gold. So, and Mr. Miracle, Big Barda also there alongside them. And then we also, as you mentioned, Mr. Terrific, Lois, and the Atom also making an appearance there. And then we have some of these other worlds that appear here. We have an appearance from Apocalypse also. Yeah, alongside the freedom fighters and Granny and Callbacks, who are doing their Civil War stuff here, we also get perhaps the first DCAU appearance of Mogo, the Green Lantern planet. I can't remember him making an appearance before.
No, and I definitely don't think this is supposed to be Oa, because we've seen Oa from space before, and I don't remember it being having that look to it in this series. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that was in fact Mogo.
There we go. Well, so lots of little Easter eggs there in that little bit there, and as you mentioned, we do get 2 callbacks to previous stories here. I'm not sure if they just reused the same panels and sort of digitally added them in or not, but if they didn't, if Mr. Filardi drew these from scratch again, they're pretty spot on to what his original drawings were of Martian Manhunter interacting with the Oracle, and then with Darkseid from that fallen Earth interacting with our Earth's Wonder Woman. But there's a lot of greens obviously early on in this issue, because they're all encapsulated in that Green Lantern bubble. So the shading that Nick Filardi the colors and the shading he went with a lot of the greens, and then later as the Flash is running around in the bubble, we get more yellow brought in. Those are great. And then, of course, as the life equation begins to be unleashed inside of it, we get the blue color, which I guess traditionally, at least in the comics, that the blue ring in the Lantern Corps was the color of hope. So that could be why he went with that color. All that stuff that was used for the White Lantern Corps also is brought in within the midst of that blue. So it's interesting. I don't know if he chose those colors specifically based on what those colors were assigned to during the Blackest Night storylines and the different colored Lantern Corps. But I thought that was interesting, because obviously both of those things I feel like are going to be needed in that moment if you're restarting life at that point, and would be a part of a life equation if that was the case. But we do get more of the deep oranges and reds and the golds, the deep gold colors of the of Amazo 2, as he and Amazo 1 sort of have this final battle, and then as he dissipates, the Kirby crackle is a plenty for this issue. So lots of Kirby crackle all over the place, and of course what seems to be Mr. Beavers' trademark, the very expressive faces of the Justice League members, both as they're reunited with each other, and then later on as even the sadness that's expressed as Vixen and John sort of have this conversation about the sort of the deterioration of their relationship. But I think there's one specific panel that stands out for the majority. You sent this to me yesterday, right after you had read the issue, and it's a direct homage to a very pivotal, important scene.
Yeah. Nick Filardi's colors there, and then of course Ethen Beavers as the penciler in that scene. It's a direct homage, and again, it is really both of them working together, because not only is it posed perfectly, it's an homage to maybe one of the most iconic moments in any of the DCAU episodes, that of course being Apocalypse Now Part 2, when Superman is standing over the grave of Dan Turpin. They have Overman sort of paying his last respects to his version of Lois Lane, who of course died, as we talked about when we were going over the plot there. He sort of is speaking about his grief, and also sort of acknowledging that he must pay for his sins. And as that sort of zooms out, you see not only are the freedom fighters there ready to sort of take him to trial, but he is in fact standing in pretty much a perfect reimagining of that shot from Apocalypse Now, standing in front of the grave with the sort of the barren tree in the foreground over top of him, and sort of standing in silhouette with the sort of yellowish orange sky behind him. It's just an incredible homage and a great moment, and a great homage to one of the all-time great moments in the DCAU. And yeah, I think there's a lot of fun. As you already mentioned, the Kirby crackle. I think my favorite single panel is after Amazo sort of reconstitutes himself and momentarily slows down the evil Amazo by blowing up his golden body, and you see Batman and Wonder Woman sort of in this bluish sphere, as you mentioned, about to sort of set off the life equation, and you see all that green and orange and Kirby crackle, and you can still see sort of the silhouette of the face of this evil Amazo. You still see the horns and the four eyes and sort of the forked tongue coming out of his mouth, sort of just in the ether at that point, even though his physical body was sort of momentarily destroyed. And then you see that blue sort of wipe out all of the green and the black, and then replace it with this with the multiverse as we know it here. And then yeah, of course, I think we have to talk about that the very final page of the issue, as you mentioned, very reminiscent of those final moments of the final episode of Justice League Unlimited. The adventure continues. Wait, wrong comic, but yeah, that's that moment, as you mentioned. They're called back to action. Another supervillain is afoot, and they're going back, and we get a shot of Fire and Ice and Vixen and Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, and then of course our classic team. We have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl. Jean, as you mentioned, had sort of gone to sort of make peace with his life in New Delhi to make sure that his friend was okay. But we have 6 of our original Leaguers, along with several of the expanded cast there, and they're all zooming off into action and I think that always works. And I like the idea of whether or not we get to see more of this story. And, obviously we're certainly hoping that we are. Oh, yeah. I always love the idea of, the battle rages on, and, or, as we said, the adventure continues even if we don't see it, we know that they'll still be out there fighting the good fight.
That's right. Absolutely. Yep. It is great. And, yeah, I think, when we started out, it's easy to try and compare comics across, these are all taking place supposedly in the same universe. So you're comparing the pencils and the visuals from one comic being Batman, The Adventures Continue, to the Justice League Infinity comic. And it's a different style. This is far more, I would say, a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more, animated, which is funny to say based on an animated property that's in, but the characters are a lot more expressive. Mr. Beavers makes his characters a lot more expressive, but I think it really works for this story specifically, because I feel like at times things were a lot more emotional and needed to be a lot more emotional, maybe. And it's his own spin that he puts on the classic Bruce Timm, Jack Kirby style of, the square jaws, big barrel chested men, and the pinup model superheroines. It's his own style, and I think by the end of it, I've really appreciated his work. And grown to really appreciate the way that he goes about bringing these characters to life. So him and Nick Filardi. I don't have a cutesy nickname like I do necessarily for Ty Templeton and best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, or Jordan Gibson and Monica Kubina, but I think these two gentlemen make a great team, and honestly brought a lot of life into the story here. And I think a lot of the story couldn't have happened. It would have been as effective if not for the excellent artwork. And man, aren't we blessed to have 2 different DCAU properties with some just really outstanding artists doing their best to bring these stories to life.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned that the sort of overly, maybe not overly is the wrong word, but the very expressive faces wouldn't necessarily fit in every comic. But I think especially in moments like at the end when it's, Vixen is sort of breaking up with John, we have this sort of panel sequence where they're speaking, and she sort of puts her hand on his face, and they both have this sort of sadness, and then we cut to this the dark silhouettes as Vixen sort of walks away. It's very melodramatic, and we have John sort of still standing in shadow, and then as Shaira sort of enters the frame and sort of offers him a little bit of an olive branch in the form of a piece of cake, then the brighter colors and sort of the full figure of the character returns there, and you kind of move them out of the shadow and back into the light. I just love some of the storytelling techniques that that Mr. Beavers and Mr. Filardi were able to do for this story, both for those big over the top moments like we talked about with the crazy universe ending stuff, and also those more sort of the more melodramatic, more soap opera-y type moments of the series.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, I think this is continues to get some thumbs up from us. We obviously are hoping for more stories to be told in any DCAU form or fashion. It would be cool to see this series continue, but if not, to see more different stories being told with these properties, and hopefully WB and DC Comics continues to wet our whistle, so to speak, with this property. But overall, I think this was such an enjoyable 7 months, and I'm hoping to see more. But if not more from this, then more of something else in the DCAU, I guess.
Yes, that is what we're hoping for. We have not received any official word as of now on whether or not we'll be getting a season 2 of this, or in fact a season 3 of Batman: The Adventures Continue. But we obviously, as you said, Cal, would certainly be up for that, and we want to know what you think as well. Please reach out to us on @DCAU Review, either on Twitter or Instagram. Let us know what you think, not only of this final issue, but of the series as a whole. Do you want a second season? Do you want to see a different collection of characters from the DCAU focused on? Do you want to see a Batman Beyond or a Static Shock comic? What would you like to see next, if there are in fact more DCAU tie-in comics coming? And in the case of Justice League Infinity, what would you like to see in a season 2? We definitely like to hear from you there. But we have both had quite a bit of fun re-entering the world of Justice League Unlimited, the time frame of Justice League Unlimited here with this comic series. And as we begin to wrap things up here, we just want to say thank you again to everybody for listening, whether you do so on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or of course, if you are listening and or watching on the Pod Tower YouTube channel. We appreciate it if you are on whatever you're listening to us on. If you have the ability to, we do appreciate if you could give us 5 stars or a thumbs up, or write us a review, whatever you'd like. You can. We do appreciate that, and that does help us out. So if you have the time to do that, we appreciate it. And of course, if you would like to support us monetarily, you can also do so on our Anchor site, or you could pick yourself up something from our shop. You can head to dcaureview.com and look for something there, a sticker or a hat, or have a lot going on. We've had a lot to talk about recently, Cal, with our bonus episodes because of these 2 ongoing DCAU tie-in comics. So it's kind of like, it feels like we're not quite going to know what to do with ourselves for the next little while here. We'll have to get a little bit more creative, perhaps, with our monthly bonus content that we try to bring everybody going forward.
Yeah, maybe we'll finally have some time to do another edition of the Discuss This League, where we bring in our friends to chat about pitching around some ideas about various different things. Hey, maybe we'll bring in some people to talk about what the next seasons of Batman: The Adventures Continue or Justice League Infinity could look like. Or hey, let's talk about what it would look like to bring in a Static Shock tie-in comic book, or a Batman Beyond tie-in. What would those look like? So if you're interested in hearing some more stuff, some more discussions around tie-in comics, tweet Liam at DCAU Review. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear it. If you want more of content discussing this, hey, we could do bonus coverage of some of the older tie-in comics, all the stuff that's available now on the fabulous DC Universe app. We could always do some old school reviews and talk Batman Adventures or Batman Gotham Adventures, Superman Adventures, hey, Adventures in the DC Universe, was that your jam? Let us know if that's something that's up your alley and you want to hear us talk more about these comics. We could do some retro reviews too. But yeah, we need to know what you guys are into. So definitely tweet us and let us know. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll do an upcoming episode where we'll talk about what we'd like to see from the next season, if there is an additional season of Justice League Infinity. So either way, thank you everybody for tuning in and letting us talk about these. It's been a fun 7 months, but I'm gonna enjoy not having to record an extra double dose at least for a couple months, hopefully.
Yes, I think for the at least from the standpoint of scheduling and not having to worry about getting it out as quickly as possible from when the issue releases, it'll be nice to have a little bit more time to plan these things out going forward. But again, we thank you everybody for listening, and definitely let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear next from us. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll be back soon with another episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.